All right, I'm excited to be behind the lunch slot this year. I think last year was before the lunch slot and everyone was hungry. So hopefully you're fed. If you need to get up and move at all during the session, please feel free to. And I'm really excited today to be here to share what I kind of reflected on. Basically how I created this talk. I was on an airplane and I thought, what are the top things that people ask me? And so I reflected on the last 10 years of working in pancreatic disorders and pancreatic cancer. And then I asked myself, and I went through and jotted down a bunch of notes on an airplane, and then I plopped it into this slide deck. So I hope you find this valuable. I hope there are some really important and key takeaways for this. This is meant to be both a patient and caregiver guide. So I want to set the tone for today to really just kind of understand why this matters and why this is so critical. Every single one of us eat at some point in our lifetime. Nutrition, nutrients, carbs, proteins, and fats, these things are the fundamental reasons that we are able to survive in our human bodies. And so we know things like combating malnutrition, weight loss, skeletal muscle mass loss, these things are critical to think about during a pancreatic cancer journey, pretty much at all time points. We can't forget about these throughout our milestones. Nutrition at a physiological baseline, again, supports our bodily functions, our energy, our mood, our sleep. If anyone's ever eaten a whole bunch of added sugars or a big piece of birthday cake right before bedtime, you might be tossing and turning. You've got kind of a sugar high, if you will, right? So these things can impact what we eat and what types of foods that we consume impact our day-to-day functions. It also plays a role in treatment tolerance. If we've lost a lot of weight, we've lost a lot of muscle mass, we're not nourished when we're showing up to our treatments or surgeries, there are risks associated with that. Nutrition also plays such an imperative role in overall survival, our quality of life, and how we perceive our quality of life. So if I didn't convince you, go back to that slide and revisit what resonates with you at some point. So we'll go through our top 10 tips now. Number 1, choose high protein, high calorie foods. I call these our high value items. So when we're looking at our plate, what's going to be the biggest value to our body? Sometimes we're excited and we're like, I want that bowl of ice cream. There's nothing wrong with that. But is that going to be the highest value for what our body needs today and now for nourishment? Separating food for pleasure with food for nourishment, I think, is a really helpful concept that I try to talk through with people. Food is fuel. Food can also be for pleasure. But particularly when we're going through treatments or some of these different milestones, preparing, recovering from surgeries, we're not absorbing food very well, we need to think as food being fuel as a priority. So we know that pancreatic cancer and its treatments can often increase the need for certain nutrients, calories, and protein to help us be able to maintain our strength and muscles. Weight loss and muscle loss, particularly both of those coupled together, make it incredibly harder to tolerate treatment and can also very much impact our quality of life. So I want you to think, let's stay really practical in this conversations together. What do we do about this? So when we're looking at our plate, we're thinking about our meals. I want us to focus on what's considered or called nutrient-dense foods. How do we get the most bang for our buck with what we are eating? That are going to provide good calories, good protein, in smaller portion sizes throughout our day distributed. All calories are not created equal. I know you may have been told, I hear this all the time, one of my doctors told me just to eat huge bowls of ice cream or to go to In-N-Out every week. I get that all the time. I'm like, In-N-Out's delicious, trust me. But all calories are not created equal in how they fuel us and what they're going to provide to our body from, again, a nourishment standpoint. So separating pleasure to nourishment and fuel is very helpful. And that also sometimes can help you with just what food choices that you feel excited to make to support your body's needs in that moment. We want to think of our protein-rich foods, our healthy fats, and our calorie boosters. If you don't know where to get started with this, think about what you eat each day. And at minimum, look at 1 or 2 meals or snacks and add something that's going to be nutritious and high value to that. For example, let's say I make a fruit smoothie every day with yogurt fruit smoothie, right? Something simple. Can we add a nice spoonful of almond butter in that? Can we add some sliced avocado in that? You're going to add a lot of calorie, nutrients, vitamins, and minerals in one spoonful that you're not going to even notice is in there. So it's, again, like trying to find these ways just to boost things up without feeling like you have to have an entire other meal or snack is a good place to get started. We need to manage side effects with the right food and medications. This is so important because if you come and meet with me or meet with your medical team and you're saying that I can't eat because I'm nauseous, I can't eat because I have no appetite, I can't eat because I have diarrhea, there's only so much that we're going to be able to do unless we're controlling those things better, right? So ask yourself, what is the barrier and how can I target that barrier to help me be able to eat better? Loss of appetite, reduced oral intake, we're not able to eat as much as we did before. We have less portion because of our nutrition impact symptoms or potential side effects from things like treatments or surgeries. This absolutely does affect our ability to eat and maintain our nutritional levels. So I want us to think and explore this with our team. How do we combine diet strategies with medication management? And if you're not prescribed something for things like nausea, constipation, diarrhea, let's have that conversation and get ahead of it. Because if that's the reason you're not eating, I can go through all the amazing meal plans and recipes as much as I can, but if you still feel those things, that's the kind of reason or the barrier that we've identified and found. Particularly when we're nauseated, we want to avoid things that are fried, greasy, overly fatty, or oily. A lot of strong-smelling odors can also be kind of a put-off for people. So being mindful of things like chilies or stews that have a lot of spices or flavors, that smell or that odor can be very kind of nauseating sometimes. Spicy or sweet foods, large portions. So when we overeat, and especially when our pancreas isn't working as well as it could, it's not going to be able to digest that amount of food as well as it did before. So we have to be mindful of just how much we're eating at one time and we're not overly stuffing ourselves. As well as things like concentrated and excessive added sugars. Sometimes we forget about things like juice, which can have a lot of added sugars in a cup. And for many people, like lemonades and juice, that can increase or exacerbate things like nausea for them, just with the amount of sugar coming in at one time. So we may need to dilute or find other ways to hydrate, which goes nicely into tip number 3. Stay hydrated, but time your fluids wisely. Who in here has a hydration plan? I want all of you tonight to please work on your hydration plan. I only saw 3 hands. All of you should have a hydration plan. This helps ensure that you, A, stay hydrated. Number 2, we're avoiding things like dehydration. And number 3, we're not impacting our ability to eat or appetite because we're using fluids in a way that's not as ideal for our body. Dehydration can worsen fatigue and other symptoms, and we know that when we're drinking most of our fluids with meals, there's also potential side effects or reduced appetite, feeling of fullness. We're not as excited to eat our meals because we're focused on our hydration. It's really helpful to space things out, have a separate food and nutrient plan, and a separate hydration plan. If you don't carry a water bottle with you, especially when you're traveling, you've got appointments, you have personal life things that you should be attending to as well, please make sure you have some sort of travel water bottle or something that can allow you to make sure that you have hydration readily available. If plain water tastes off, we can add cucumber, lemons, limes, or other natural cut fruit for flavor. Always thinking about things like sugar-free popsicles or other, frozen items if cold sensitivity is not an issue for you. We can add things like ice cubes to our smoothies and blend those in for a little extra hydration as well. And we want to limit things like caffeine and alcohol and focus on hydration that's going to be more impactful for the body. Another tip I think that's helpful with hydration is breaking your day up into 3 sections. So if you've worked with me, you know I do that a lot with our hydration plans. Look at your waking hours, chop it up into 3 blocks. You want most of your hydration to be in the first 2 blocks of your day, and you still want a little bit of hydration in your last block, but not so much to where you're up urinating all night or it's waking you up. So we're kind of divvying and conquering the hydration plan throughout our day. Tip number 4, take pancreatic enzymes with meals and snacks if these are prescribed. I cannot tell you how many patients I have seen that have a prescription, but they've never filled it, or they don't know what it's for, or they're not sure how to take it because they haven't had that conversation yet. But they come and say, oh, I think my medical oncologist prescribed that a couple of months ago. Well, what happened with that? Oh, I didn't fill it. I didn't know what it was for. So having these conversations and being informed, I think, is incredibly useful, and also knowing what you're taking and why it's there so you can understand the use of these medications and things like enzymes. Exocrine pancreatic insufficiency, it's called EPI. Many of you probably have heard of this before. It's very common in pancreatic cancer, especially our surgical cases where we've removed, whether it's usually the head of the pancreas, we see higher rates of EPI. Essentially, this means that pancreas is no longer able to produce enough of its kind of pancreatic digestive enzymes as much as it used to. And the pancreatic enzymes help break down and absorb our food properly. So we see a number of different kind of clinical manifestations or symptoms can happen with EPI. It's no one size fits all. We've seen people just have bloating and weight loss with EPI. We've seen people, more in the textbook, have things like oily, greasy, floaty, yellow stools. So there's not a one size fits all of how people present. I did a talk on this last year more extensively at this symposium, so if you're interested to learn more about EPI, you can always refer to last year's symposium as well. Check with your medical team if PERT is appropriate for you if you're not on it and you're experiencing some of the above symptoms. And you should be rescreening and revisiting this every 2 to 3 months is what the recommendations are, because it can pop up and present in different ways along your journey. It's not just at one time point that we see it. So some practical tips. I want to also remind you all to be kind to your clinicians and your medical team, in that not all providers are familiar with EPI. So don't show up and be like, I saw this lecture, I'm very upset, I have these things, and I think I have EPI, why didn't you tell me? Not everyone's an expert in all of your care needs. So just as a reminder, when you're approaching your medical team or your providers, you can absolutely advocate, or you could always ask to see if there's somebody else on the care team that may be more familiar with EPI, if your main treating physician has kind of less understanding of it. I often see a lot of initial doses are prescribed much lower. We see this in the literature, that we may see very low doses of enzymes prescribed versus what an adult may need. Because when medical providers go to prescribe enzymes, there's a lot of doses that they get to choose from, and it's really confusing. So if they're not familiar with dosing, you may get a dose that's much lower than what an adult may need with pancreatic cancer. So just something to think about. So even if you're on them, you might not be on the correct dose of them. Typically speaking, we're starting between 48,000 to 72,000 units in somewhat of that range per meal, and half the dose with snacks or smaller meals. I use the concept, what I like to tell people is dynamic dosing. You don't eat the exact same meal or snack every time. And so we don't need the exact same enzymes usually every meal or snack. We might have kind of a rough starter dose of what we're doing with most of our meals and snacks, but we have to stay flexible with ourselves and our meal plans and recognize the types of foods, the amount of foods, and how these foods work for our body may change over time, as well as that means we need different types of, or different amounts of enzymes with different meals. So staying flexible with that. We want to take our enzymes usually with the first bite of the mealtime so it can properly mix with the food and do its job. If you're somebody that forgets, you're like, I have a prescription, I always forget, and I always take it at the end of the meal or 30 minutes after. I get that sometimes as well. Set an alarm or figure out a way that it can feel almost like a habit. First thing I'm doing is taking my enzymes. This is part of my eating kind of process. and just get into the groove of it. So figure out what strategies are going to work for you to create some consistency. It's summertime soon. Don't leave your enzymes in your 105-degree car. They will literally look like a very strange looking waffle. Like it's like a very gritty, bubbled up like waffle looking thing. So please just be mindful, and then don't take them if they're sitting in your hot car and they've kind of disintegrated. So just be really mindful with temperatures and when we're traveling with our prescriptions, keeping them safe and away from high heat. Tip number 5, focus on small, frequent meals rather than 2 to 3 meals per day. This one, we always say this, there's no magic number for how many meals you should eat. Think of it as eating opportunities and think of this as mini meals. You do not need to have like traditional standard meals. It's totally normal and it's absolutely okay to have mini meals, is what I like to call them. So we've got this blend between a meal and a snack. We've got a nice little mini meal. It's not all or nothing concept. Focus on those highest value items at your meals first. That's going to give you the most nutrients. You can think about rotating solid foods with things like smoothies or shakes rather than trying to drink a protein shake at a meal. It's a whole lot coming in at one time. So try rotating some solid meals with things like protein shakes or your high-calorie smoothies that we can do. That can help with some of the fullness and just feeling like you're not always eating. I don't know about you guys, but eating 6 meals a day is a lot, and it feels very heavy, and it feels very frustrating. I'm sure some of you are nodding yes, and you can probably resonate with that, especially if you have somebody who's like, you need to eat more. Have you eaten? When's your next meal? It feels very frustrating. So if 1 or 2 of those eating opportunities can be, a high-calorie, high-protein smoothie that you can drink, sometimes that experience just feels less heavy to go through. Okay? If you're prescribed enzymes, you'll need to distribute them out to all of your eating opportunities, not just your meals. So a lot of times I'll see prescriptions written for 3 times a day. And then I ask you, how many times are you eating? And you say 6. And then I say, well, how are you doing your enzymes? And then people say, I only take them 3 times because that's what my prescription is for. So just make sure that when you're, communicating with your clinical team, if you're on pancreatic enzymes, that your prescription matches what your actual diet pattern or your eating opportunity number is. So if you're eating 5 times a day, that's what your prescription should also be written for, and you can work with your prescribing physician for that. Tip number 6, monitor for nutrient deficiencies, especially when we have known EPI, or we're not able to produce those pancreatic digestive enzymes as well as we used to. Unfortunately, this can put us at risk of a number of different vitamin and mineral deficiencies, things like iron, B12, magnesium, vitamin A, D, E, K. There's a number of them, calcium. We see these well documented in the literature over and over and over again. And then if we add a GI surgery history onto that, where we don't absorb as well as we used to, on top of EPI, now you've got kind of a double whammy of vitamin and mineral deficiency potential. So these are things we should just have as part of our kind of clinical care plan monitoring. Not to say you need to get these every couple of weeks. That's too much. But at least annually, for the most part with EPI, is the recommendations that we're at least just assessing our levels, seeing if we need to have any sort of additional vitamin or mineral supplementation, or if we need to be on something that's more high dose or prescribed to be able to maintain our nutrient levels. So these are things, again, just part of our maintenance plan. If you're not eating enough, if you ever look on some of the protein drinks or the oral nutrition supplements, you'll see a lot of times on the label or the facts label, you'll see a number of different vitamins and minerals that they provide as well. So for some people, they'll say, I might need, or I'm thinking about taking a multivitamin. And then I'll always kind of think and ask, are we taking any types of protein drinks or oral nutrition supplements? Because those are also going to give you extra nutrients when you look at them. So consider that too. That's also a way to give a little bit of extra vitamins and minerals in some of the different products on the market or commercial products. You may need to have a complete multivitamin that's designed for malabsorption, especially if you're taking enzymes and struggling to absorb the nutrients from your food. We may need to have a multivitamin or additional supplementation that may be a little bit higher dose than what's over the counter. Be really careful not to take your vitamins and mineral supplementation if you're prescribed those or advised on an empty stomach. Has anyone done that? Oh, it doesn't feel good. Yeah. We can feel really nauseated. It feels like what just happened. So just be mindful that we're not contributing to things like nausea or some of these nutrition impact symptoms by trying to treat nutrient deficiency. So often we'll take these either in liquid form or in tablets that we can crush, so it's a little bit easier. Certain forms are going to be less hard than some of the more enteric-coated types of vitamin or mineral supplements or the hard coating. So there's different strategies for tolerability, especially with things like iron, as some of you know, which can cause some side effects for people. Tip number 7, manage constipation proactively. It can often cause bloating, right? If we've got a lot of stool in us that needs to evacuate, but we haven't been able to, no wonder that causes bloating or feeling of like really heaviness, right? So when stool's not fully evacuating or leaving the body as often as it should, this can lead to a lot of unwanted symptoms, gas and bloating being two of the probably most common, especially if we're taking pain medications or opioids. We're not moving our body a lot, we have less physical activity, or we're not eating a whole lot or drinking enough fluids or hydrated. This can all contribute and lead to constipation. So we want to prevent and monitor before it gets severe, impacts your health, or leads you to have to call your care team to figure out what to do. So check in, figure out what's your goal as far as bowel movements goes, what's too much or too little. Work with your team if you need to inquire about things like a stool softener or laxative, especially if you're on a prescribed opioid-based pain management program. Going back to the hydration plan, which all of you I've assigned homework to tonight, so you should have that in motion for tomorrow, hopefully. Drink plenty of fluids and make sure we've got our hydration plan spaced out throughout the day, so we're not hydrating in just one portion of our day, right? It's consistency. Stay physically active. It can be really helpful just to break up some daily movement in multiple chunks of the day. You're probably seeing I'm getting in the swing of consistency, break up your day in chunks. It creates the body to be fueled, hydrated, and moved throughout the day, right? So that's really like the premise of a lot of this too, is how do we create this schedule that's going to help optimize our nutrition status? We can focus on natural anti-constipation foods, things like some hummus, some lentils, beans, potentially if we're not too gassy or it's not so gas producing for us. Things like kiwi is wonderful to help naturally soften the stools. We can put that in our smoothies or eat kiwi fruit. Whole grains and a number of different veggies can help. Tip number 8, low appetite. Small movement matters. I cannot stress this enough. You do not need to go and do like an hour at the gym each day. You can absolutely schedule and do some light walks before and after meal times to help promote and get the appetite ready and to help walk off the meal after, especially if we're somebody that feels full quickly, we're gassy, we're bloated when we eat. These small couple of minutes can be very, very impactful. Can't tell you how many patients tell me, I feel so much less bloated now that I do this. So just these small strategies to think about and schedule in. Start small, even if it's 2 minutes before and after our meal times if we can. If we can't walk, let's think about chair exercises or some seated things that just get us moving a little bit. Consider scheduling if we are doing a structured exercise regimen or we're working with a physical therapist. Consider scheduling your mealtime right after that to help you recover, because you may feel least bloated or most ready to eat after you've done some physical movement. So if you've got your physical therapy appointments, 3 times a week at this time, think about having your lunch within that 30 minutes or so after to help you recover. That's a time to help stimulate the appetite, get in some good recovery nutrition so we can help build that muscle mass. And always check in with your medical team when you're starting a new program. Tip number 9, focus on what you can do. not what you cannot control. You can write this on a piece of paper, hang it on a fridge, make a t-shirt, whatever you like to remind you this, because sometimes we just get so wrapped up in all the things that we cannot control. And nutrition is one of the things for many people that feels like one of the only things that they can control. Use it to your advantage. Going back to that concept of food being fuel, and less so thinking about food as a pleasure seeker to help us maintain our strength and muscle and energy. It's a natural response to experience frustration, avoid hard conversation topics, and limit and avoid foods and ingredients. You go online and you see 100 ways you can kill cancer with your diet. I promise you, if that was the case, we would have cracked that by now, right? It's not that simple. So the goal is adequate nutrition to help maintain your human self while avoiding nutrient deficiencies. And please remind yourself that no diet is perfect and it's not all or nothing. Do not guilt trip yourself or shame yourself for days because you had a cookie. Let's not do that. Let's let peace go for that, okay? Stay flexible, be intentional with your diet pattern, and give yourself permission to eat foods and ingredients that make sense for you. Even if it's not your perfect plate or it's everything you had hoped, that's okay. Let's focus on the amount of nourishment that we can get in. There's no single right diet for pancreatic cancer or other pancreatic disorders. The best diet is one that provides enough calories, protein, vitamins, and minerals, diversity of the diet, considering things that you enjoy from a religious, a cultural preference standpoint. It's not going to be a one-size-fits-all. And food that you can tolerate. If you're everyone keeps on my meal train, they're bringing me these soups and these items, if those don't make sense for you, don't feel ashamed to say, hey, let's mix up the meal train recipes, because this is what's going to make better sense for me in my current present state. And it's okay if it made sense for you before and it doesn't now. Stay flexible with yourself and allow your home care team to be flexible with you. Foods that you enjoy, you're more likely to eat. If you look at something and you're ooh, that does not look good, you're not going to eat it, right? That's just human response. We eat with our eyes. Please work with a registered dietitian for support. I want to remind you that health coaches, general nutritionists, do not have expertise or credentialed ability in the States to practice to see unique care patients, particularly in the oncology setting. So please look for somebody that is credentialed and certified to work with you that can understand your own unique needs. This is so important. Look for dietitians who specialize in oncology care. Those are the two, I'd say, top credentials in the US to seek. That's the insurance benefits coverage. You can see if you have benefits. Some people have unlimited coverage and they don't even know it. So please check for those CPT codes if that's helpful. And you want to avoid nutrition consults from friends, family, loved ones, especially when we're feeling really overwhelmed or people are providing us a lot of conflicting information based on, what we've heard and learned from our healthcare team. I hear that all the time. This person told me this, this person told me this, my wife told me this, and it can feel really, really conflicting. So try to wash that out. And if you are a caregiver or loved one, your intentions are not unnoticed, but we'll make sure that we continue to provide consistent evidence-based information in the nutrition realm because it is so confusing. Just a couple quick highlights as I wrap up. We've done a lot of incredible work in the Integrative Practice Unit, which is our IPU clinic under the leadership of Dr. Tim Donahue. And we've started this CareVive platform, which is essentially looking at what's called patient-reported outcomes to help us better understand people's needs in the moment and be able to provide the right resources at the right time for people going through our clinic program. Care is complex, it's long. If we're only screening people or having conversations at certain time points, we're missing other time points. So this type of platform allows us to understand people's needs more from a longevity standpoint and not just at one particular clinic visit or at initial visit. This is some of the amazing care team behind this. I know Jeanette already introduced herself earlier as our patient navigator, but we now have a navigator-led integrated model of care, which many of you may or may not have experienced. This is within the last couple of years. So if you've received care at UCLA Health prior to that, you may not have had the pleasure of going through this new program that we've started, where we're really looking at how do we make sure that people's needs are identified, triaged, and resources are provided at different time points throughout their care journey. We've got a lot of really great data showing us that these types of screening tools and identifying needs in the moment are helping people figure out what's the right time for things like a social worker, a dietitian, et cetera, and that they're feeling supported and aligned with their care team. And I'll go ahead and open it up for any questions that you have.
Hello.
Hello.
Thank you very much. It's very, very helpful. It doesn't matter what you can or cannot eat if the tumor that you have is on the head or the tail of the pancreas.
Yeah, so I think the tumor location can change the experience of things like if somebody has higher blood sugars, if somebody has things like EPI. So the tumor location can, put higher risk factors in some of those things. But overall, that's why we want to personalize and figure out what other, comorbidities or what other, side effects or symptoms are you experiencing. So then we can kind of create a diet pattern that's going to make sense for you. Great question.
Hi, I'm here with my friend who was diagnosed, and my sister, it's been, last week it was a year that she passed from pancreatic cancer. And when we were going through that with her, she had a lot of issues. She was in the 4th stage. So looking at protein drinks, they have so much sugar in them, but they told her she couldn't have sugar. So it was like, and we haven't dealt with that with Danelia because she's really good about eating and stuff, but I just kind of wanted to ask because I remember I kept going to the stores, and that was down in Texas, and the sugar was so high content, so my older sister was like, well, she's not supposed to have all this sugar, so how does that balance?
Yeah, so if you go to the market, you'll probably see there's depending on what store you go to, there's probably at least 30 different brands in all different types of protein drinks. And if you really spend some time label checking, they all look very different. You will see anything from 1 gram of sugar to 45 grams of sugar, of added sugar. You'll see anywhere between 7 grams of protein to, now they have 50 grams of protein in some of the drinks. And when we think if we're going on an extreme of anything, let's try to live a little bit in the middle. So you don't necessarily need a protein drink that has 0 grams of added sugar. You might have one that has 2 or 3, and that's totally fine. When we start going over 6, 7 grams of added sugar, that's where we start seeing that can be a lot to sit in the blood at one time. So I'd recommend trying to find protein drinks that are anywhere between, usually there's minimum of 1 up to 7, which there's a lot of brands out there that now offer that. You'll usually see, though, those particular protein drinks are marketed for weight loss because they're very high protein, low calorie, low sugar. And so what I like to do with those ones is let's use that as a smoothie base. So we now have a protein smoothie base. We can add things like yogurt, we can add things like fruit, we can add a little of ground flaxseed or some different items or sliced avocado. And now we have a much higher calorie smoothie that has a nice protein base from the protein drink. And that's a great way to replace the meal. So a lot of it goes back to label checking and really figuring out which brand you're buying. Some of the commercial brands, I kid you not, they probably have 50 different types of drinks with one brand. So it can get really complicated, so you can always work with your dietitian to figure out which couple of products make the most sense for you. Yeah, that's a super overwhelming space though.
All right, thank you, Shelby. So a lot of great tips in the talk there. One thing I wanted to mention where you were mentioning about optimization of your pancreolipase, And few people do that. They get the prescription written. It says take 2 with the meal, 1 with the snack. There's an online dosing calculator, and I don't know if you know about it. It's called pertcalculator.org, made by the Canadian Digestive Disease Foundation. And what you do is you put in your weight and the brand of pancreolipase that you're taking, and then what concentration. And you start building menus, so it'll ask you, are you having breakfast? You pick out the different parts of that meal, and it's keeping track of all the carbohydrates, fats, and protein, so you're much more closer to what you actually need. And I was told, take 1 24,000 lipase unit, and that certainly wasn't enough for me with what I was eating. And I did it the old-fashioned way. You kept your daily food journal, and you wrote down, and then 24 to 40 hours later, you noted what your bowel movement was, and you knew whether you needed more or not. So this makes it much easier to use that. And I also liked about your statement, worry about what you can control. Chapter 6, Dr. Wayne Dyer of Your Erroneous Zones, because I read that book. So really, it's very true. Focus your energy on what you can control, and things will go much better. Thanks.
Yeah, I appreciate the comments. Thank you for sharing.
Hi. I wanted to know, when you talk about fluid intake, how much you're talking about, because my bladder can get excited when the sprinklers come on at the veggie.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, great question. So anytime we're starting a new hydration plan, number one, we want to make sure that we don't have a fluid restriction need, or we've been told that we have to be careful because we have fluid accumulation or swelling, or things like our kidney or liver aren't working as well as they used to. So we want to, A, we got to personalize it. But B, I think a good rule of thumb is when you're starting to up titrate or increase how much fluids you're targeting each day to stay better hydrated, do it in increments of roughly 6 to 8 ounces every 1 to 2 weeks. Because that's what we're doing, is we're slowly allowing the body get used to having increased hydration, and we're keeping it consistent, and then we increase it each 1 to 2 weeks. Rather than going from, I kid you not, 20 ounces to 80. Like, you're gonna be up all night, you're gonna not have a good time sleeping, and it's gonna feel miserable. You're gonna be always in the bathroom. So our body is, a creature of habit, so you gotta give it time to adjust to having more fluids. We're most dehydrated when we wake up first thing in the morning because we haven't been hydrating all night usually. So that's a really good opportunity in the first hour to get started on your hydration plan too.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi, Shelby. I'm Patty. And
Hi, Patty.
hi. So I have 2 questions. One is about taking pancreatic enzymes, and I've even called the company to try to get an answer on this. I saw you in your slides say take at the first bite, but if I'm taking, let's say, 3 capsules is my dose, I've also been told to spread that out through the meal.
Yeah.
What do you say about that?
Yeah, that's a good question. There's 2 ways to do dosing. You can either front load or take all at the beginning of the meal, or you can distribute out depending on how long your meal is. For some people who are grazing, or they're eating typically more than 20 to 30 minutes, we may space it out during the mealtime, because that helps the enzyme mix with the food over the course or duration of the meal. For some people who eat within 20 minutes, a lot of time front loading or taking everything at the beginning works just as well. The problem is if you take it throughout your mealtime and you forget. So a lot of people will take it and then they'll eat their meal and say, oh my gosh, I forgot the other 2 capsules. So I think it also depends on your success with being able to take it throughout the meal.
Okay. And
Great question.
For the, also, I was told to save the last capsule till the end of the meal. Does that make sense? I don't know how long the food is.
Yeah, that's a good
stomach.
question. I'm not sure in your case. I don't usually recommend at the end of mealtime because we're no longer eating.
Okay. And my second question is, so I'm on Medicare, and when I went into the donut, the price of the pancreatic enzyme tripled.
Yes.
Which I didn't know until I had gotten it by mail and couldn't do anything
Yes.
about it.
My goodness.
So I started going on Amazon and ordering a brand there where, the breakdown looked the same as some of the prescriptions. I wanted to know what you think about those online brands in general.
Yeah, absolutely. So over-the-counter digestive enzymes are not the same thing as prescription because they have a different coding and they are not FDA regulated. So we must be very careful if we're taking over-the-counter digestive enzymes. They are not apples to apples. Cost can absolutely be a concern. So exploring patient assistance programs, exploring your prescription benefit plan. I've had a number of patients, I've had them call and figure out, do you have other options for prescription benefits? And they're able to change into a different plan under Medicare and get better coverage. So explore prescription benefits, explore the patient assistance programs of the drug companies, and also find out under whatever insurance that you have, if there's other alternatives. There's, 4 kind of main brands. So it may be that one's not covered, but the other one may be covered.
Okay, I'm only aware of 2 brands. Could you say what the 4 are?
I can show you offline.
Okay, that sounds great. I had one other question about that. When you said it was different coding, if they're in a capsule, does that apply?
So it's not going to be the same prescription coding because that's why they're considered, if you look on it, it's a dietary supplement. It's not considered a prescription by a physician.
Okay, great. That's very helpful. Thank you.
Of course. I know you've been waiting, so coming on over.
No problem. My name is Louise. I am 5 weeks post-op, thanks to Dr. Donahue. And I have had 0 problems with food all my life. Overweight.
Amazing.
And through this journey, I've lost about 30 pounds, which I still have more to go. But the fact of the matter is that I never had an issue post-op, after the first week. No issues at all. But I would like a reference back to my husband who died of pancreatic cancer back in 2019. And he, fortunately, was a foodie. The whole family's foodies. Everyone's a good cook. He was home. He had concierge food, anything he wanted, anytime. We were prescribed pancreatic enzyme, and I have to tell you that what you're talking about is very different than what there was 8, 9 years ago. And I was gobsmacked the first time I went to the pharmacy to get it because of the cost. I mean, it was just eye-opening. But I don't know if this still works, but what worked for us ultimately, it took me several weeks to do it, but he was a veteran. And through the VA, I was able to get the VA to pay for his pancreatic enzyme. And I think that made it possible for him to live a whole year enjoying food almost until the last 3 weeks. So if that's an alternate way to pay for it for people who need it, something to explore.
Yes, thank you so much for sharing. And that goes back to patient assistance programs. And searching for those. There are some that are specific to pancreatic enzyme replacement therapies. Thank you.